Good morning and welcome, everybody. As your first Vice President and National Safety Coordinator, I have the privilege of supporting and assisting our members every day in achieving our goal of making our skies, our industry, and our profession safer and more secure. And none of this would be possible without the amazing work done by our hundreds of dedicated committee representatives and ALPA's world-class professional staff. So I begin by thanking them for their remarkable work and by thanking you for your support. I'm becoming comfortable in my position and more confident than ever that as NSC, I need to make sure I give our SMEs the resources and guidance to do what they do best and then just step back and get out of the way and let them do it. On March 24th, the airline industry was rocked by the news of the tragic loss of Germanwings 9525 and all 150 persons on board. The event continues to trigger discussion and debate about psychological screening of pilots. In the United States and in Canada, we already have adequate evaluations. With our first-class medical certification, supported by other checks and balances in place for daily monitoring of crew members, and we have the ability to get support for our crew members and coworkers when the need arises. Increased psychological screening is not warranted. In order to stay ahead of this issue and control the reaction of the Germanwings crash, the FAA is considering chartering a new Aviation Rulemaking Committee, or ARC, to evaluate the issue. This ARC would not be tasked with rulemaking, but with evaluating the issue to determine whether any gaps exist and whether mental health evaluations and monitoring of pilots are warranted or even possible. We're also planning to participate in an invitation-only meeting sponsored by the Aerospace Medical Association this week on the subject of pilot mental health. On another aspect of pilot health, I'm happy to report that the Federal Air Surgeon has released guidance to AMEs on how to detect and address obstructive sleep apnea, or OSA, in regard to airman medical certification. We at ALPA are pleased with the guidance and the elimination of body mass index, or BMI, as the criterion trigger to require a pilot to undergo an expensive sleep study to regain his or her medical certificate. Our aeromedical group will continue to monitor the OSA issue, but for now, it looks like we've achieved a significant win in helping our pilots who suffer from OSA keep their jobs while they receive any needed testing and treatments. ALPA's pilot assistance efforts were well showcased last month when our ALPA Pilot Assistance Forum was held April 1st through 2nd, the Washington, D.C. Hilton. The forum was a great success, attended by more than 170 pilots, airline managers, and healthcare professionals from around the world. During this event, we recognized key ALPA contributors to our pilot assistance efforts with our annual Pilot Assistance Award presented to Delta First Officer Thomas Thornton and presidential citations presented to PSA Captain Heather Dusimo and United Airlines Captain Craig Korsgaard. Now, turning to security for a moment, the TSA has adopted risk-based security, or RBS, as its way of doing business. RBS includes the popular pre-check program for passengers and known crew member, or KCM, for flight crews. We fully expect that RBS will continue to expand despite the retirement of former TSA Administrator John Pistole. Coast Guard Admiral Peter Neffinger was recently nominated by the White House to become the new administrator, and we hope the trend will continue. Now, by any measure, the known crew member program has been an unqualified success. By the end of 2014, we had 55 participating airports and 130 access points. We have since added San Jose, Washington National, Fort Lauderdale, Omaha, Boise, so we've reached the 60 airport milestone. Washington National opened with just 2 access points and is expected to open 2 more access points in a few weeks, and the TSA is also expecting to add a few more airports additionally this year. Now, as for KCM in Canada, we're working with TSA and Transport Canada to include the Jazz pilots as the first non-US pilot group in the program. We've had a meeting with A4A in early January to start the ball rolling on this initiative, and we are very optimistic about achieving a good outcome. Now, as everyone probably knows, the TSA recently dropped the requirement that pilots be in uniform when they're using KCM checkpoints. We know that same KCM locations increased the number of pilots selected to go through KCM for random screening, and we're working on the issue. We're also working to have the exemption for liquids, aerosols, and gels apply to non-uniform pilots as well. ALPA members can use TSA PreCheck at selected locations based on the approval of the local federal security director, but we formally asked the TSA to permit all pilots to use PreCheck everywhere it's available in the United States. Our discussions with TSA on this subject are continuing. We'll keep you updated. One of my favorite subjects, cargo security, is also on our radar. We recently hosted a meeting of the Aviation Security Advisory Committee's Cargo Subcommittee, and risk-based security is the focus of that group. One of our cargo security goals is to include cargo ramp operations within the Security Identification Display Area, or SIDA, in order to create one level of security for passengers on all cargo. Another one of ALPA's goals for cargo community, is to require that all cargo carriers provide a common strategy, anti-hijacking training to their pilots, which presently is not mandated by the TSA. An important part of our layered approach to airline security is the Federal Flight Deck Duty Officer Program, or the FFDO. The FFDO program is now under the management of TSA's Office of Training and Workforce Engagement. The SO's Aviation Security Group believes that the FFDO program is now in better hands than ever before, and we're already starting to see significant improvements to the program. Several ALPA pilot and staff representatives attended a quarterly FFDO working group in Dallas in mid-April, and were able to participate in or observe recurrent FFDO training. During a special awards ceremony held in conjunction with that meeting, the Federal Air Marshal Service presented retirement certificates to 8 pilots who had served as FFDOs. Another 22 pilots who continued to be in the FFDO program received the President's Volunteer Service Award, a very big deal. The Obama administration has proposed reducing the FFDO budget, but through the efforts of our government affairs and engineering and air safety departments, that funding has been restored to $22.4 million. The House and Senate have both agreed to that budget for the program. Another federal budgeting debate that will affect us is FAA reauthorization, and how that's handled is critically important to the future of NextGen, the continuing and massive effort to overhaul and modernize the U.S. air transportation system. And Tim will update you more on this topic shortly. Tim has also been added to the NextGen Advisory Council, and I've been named to the Advisory Council's Steering Committee. Tim was also elected to serve on the Executive Committee of the Next Generation Air Transportation System Institute as well. And as you probably know, one of the cornerstone technologies of NextGen is ADS-B. I have been participating in the ADS-B Equip 2020 Working Group, which is a large industry group working on ADS-B out equipage that's due by January the 1st, 2020. ALPA reps are actively participating on several special committees of RTCA, formerly known as the Radio Technical Commission for Aeronautics, a government industry group that sets technical standards for avionics and related systems. In Canada, we've seen success in implementing RNAV approaches at a number of airports in the far north. We've been working with NAV Canada and Transport Canada to implement this important project, and while we're happy with the progress that's been achieved so far, we will continue our work on this and other important Canadian safety initiatives. I have my word on that. One of the issues we've had to grapple with regarding tomorrow, or better yet stated today's, airspace is the advent of unmanned aircraft systems, or UAS, which include autonomous and remotely piloted aircraft, or RPAs. Earlier this year, the FAA issued its long-awaited notice of proposed rulemaking, or NPRM, regarding small UAS, meaning those weighing not more than 55 pounds. ALPA submitted detailed comments in response to the NPRM, along with 4,500 others. Meanwhile, the FAA has acted on hundreds of petitions for exemptions approving small UAS commercial operations. Those operations are limited to line-of-sight flights below 400 feet and must have fail-safe features to backstop a potential lost link between the operator and the RPA. ALPA continues to hold firm to the position that robust safeguards must be in place to ensure any RPA operating anywhere cannot interfere with our operation. RTCA is continuing to develop standards for detect and avoid and command and control systems for RPAs. And ALPA has several pilots and staff members on multiple groups working on these difficult issues. At the same time, meetings of the Government Industry UAS Aviation Rulemaking Committee, or ARC, continue. Transport Canada has already enacted regulations regarding UAS aircraft. The FAA proposed for small UAS is surprisingly similar to the Canadian regulation model. Another of our safety priorities is to reduce the risk of in-flight fires caused by lithium batteries. We're making significant progress in this area. Effective January the 1st of this year, the United States rules were harmonized with the ICAO technical instructions with regard to labeling and crew notification of lithium battery shipments. We're still working on the packaging requirements and the limits on the size of each package and shipment to reduce the potential for hazmat fires, and we're happy with ICAO's recent announcement to convene a working group to establish standards for packaging of lithium batteries. In Canada, effective January the 1st of 2015, we were able to get a ban on lithium metal batteries as cargo on passenger airliners, which has been an ALPA goal for Canada and around the world for many years. That same ban has been in place here in the United States for about 10 years. Unfortunately, lithium metal batteries, as well as lithium-ion batteries, still can be and are every day and every night shipped on all cargo airliners. So bottom line, the regulators acknowledge the difference in risks, but don't want to afford all cargo pilots the same level of safety as passenger airline pilots. Ladies and gentlemen, that has to change. Another area in which we continue to push for rational regulations is the need for science-based flight time and duty time limits and minimum rest requirements for all airline pilots. And let me be clear again, we will not rest until our members in the all-cargo domain and in Canada enjoy the benefit of science-based fatigue mitigation rules. ALPA is also a participant on the Air Carrier Training Arc and its Air Transportation Pilot Working Group. The FAA tasked the working group with exploring the potential for developing additional pathways for the restricted ATP certificate. We are constrained from speaking about the ARC's discussions, but I can tell you that representatives on the ARC are working collaboratively with other organizations while we protect the gains that we have made with the First Officer Qualifications and Training Rule that became effective August the 1st of 2013. Now, one of the ALPA's Air Safety Organization's primary responsibilities is to provide support to investigations in accidents and incidents. While that part of our organization is busy with a number of ongoing investigations, I'm just going to touch on a couple of high-profile recent accidents. Last month, the Transportation Safety Board of Canada released its final report on Bearskin Flight 311, a Metro that crashed during an approach at Red Lake, Ontario on November the 10th, 2013. The TSB pointed to an engine failure as the primary causal factor in the accident, which, while we agree, pilots in this accident were faced with a situation they weren't trained for and that didn't look like anything they could recognize as an engine failure until it was too late. We worked with ALPA's communications department on a public statement that generated a number of news media interviews and worked with the Bearskin MEC on their own internal communications. ALPA continues to be very actively involved in the ongoing National Transportation Safety Board investigation of the accident involving Delta Flight 1086, which departed the runway during landing rollout at LaGuardia on March 5th. Thankfully, no serious injuries resulted, but the MD-88 suffered significant damage. NTSB groups continue to look at all the facts, including component analysis, DFDR data, and information from other aircraft. Now, related to our continuing activities to promote a just culture in the airline industry, The first of two 2015 FAA InfoShare meetings was held in Pittsburgh during the week of April 13th. ALPA pilot and staff representatives, as well as several MEC representatives, attended. Captain Chuck Hogeman, our Aviation Safety Group Chair, moderated a panel on a safety study that was based on data collected from many of our airlines through the ASAIS program. That's Aviation Safety Information Analysis and Sharing, in case you were wondering. It's a huge leap forward in using the identified, aggregated data to find potentially serious safety issues before they lead to accidents and incidents. In January, I participated with a number of ALPA representatives in the Aviation Issues Conference hosted by the American Association of Airport Executives. Approximately 400 aviation representatives, including reps from APA, SWAPA, NATCA, and the Association of NetJet Pilots, attended. So it was very important that we were there and that we were well represented on virtually every panel, ensuring that ALPA's positions were heard. In early March, Captain Chuck Hogeman, our ALPA Aviation Safety Chair, and I were on panels at the NATCA Communicating for Safety Conference. This is NATCA's version of our annual ALPA Air Safety Forum, and it's a really big deal, with more than 1,000 controllers and senior industry reps attending. In April, several ALPA safety and security representatives and I participated in the annual conference of the International Federation of Airline Pilots Associations, or IFALPA. The IFALPA gathering also includes the Global Pilots Symposium, where the focus was strategic planning from a global perspective. Well, planning is well underway for the annual ALPA Air Safety Forum to be held between January 20th and 23rd at the Washington Hilton in Washington, D.C. once again. Every MEC is invited, so please mark your calendars. At the second of our two Steering and Oversight Committee meetings held so far this year, we selected the Superior Airmanship Award honorees and the annual ALPA Safety and Security Award recipients. It's always gratifying to recognize the best in our profession and the best in our committee work. We're continuing to present our one-day conferences in Washington, D.C. We're trying to keep the issues broad and high level. On April 30th, we hosted a conference on transportation security. The focus of the end title was Protecting Transportation Through Intelligence Collaboration, where we were able to delve into the way intelligence is collected, analyzed, disseminated, and ultimately put to use. As Bill already mentioned, we have another one-day conference planned for June the 25th, the issues surrounding pilot supply. These one-day conferences are very important because they help draw attention to ALPA's priority issues, provide a platform for the association to express its views, and help establish ALPA as the most credible voice in the airline industry on matters of aviation safety, security, and pilot assistance. As the first Vice President, it's also my duty to give you an update on ALPA PAC and where it stands. In 2014, ALPA PAC raised $1.432 million. That's $32 million more than our most ambitious goal for the year. Those contributions came from more than 8,000 ALPA members, more members than have ever been involved in the past. This year, the PAC has set the goal for reaching $1.8 million in receipts from roughly 10,000 ALPA pilots. In just the first 4 months of this year, the PAC has added more than 800 new contributors, which is a really, really great start. These new contributors have added more than $144,500 to our annual revenues. These numbers have put us on track to not only meet, but to exceed the goals for this year. Very good news indeed, but keep contributing, please. Now, early in this report, I talked about the Germanwings crash. This tragedy has raised many questions and recommendations, some intelligent, some downright terrible, about what changes could be made to prevent future tragedies. One of the most outlandish notions that I've heard is that pilots in the cockpit should be eliminated altogether in the name of aviation safety, yeah, I don't make this up, and security. Well, I'm here to reiterate what you in this room already know. We airline pilots are here to stay, and the traveling public needs us now more than ever to be the conscious of the industry and the bastions of safety and security. That's why we're going to keep on doing what we do so well, because honestly, nobody does it better. Thank you very much for your attention.